I got the record button hit, and ladies and gents, students, I am here with a special guest today. Super honored. She's talking to us on her day off, which is, we're very grateful. But this is DellAngelo, and she's in the world of engineering and has a plethora of experience. I can't wait for you guys to hear about some of the different things she's done, worked on, enjoyed, but also a day in the life of what it's like to have her job. So Amber, thank you so much for your time, and we're super excited that you're here.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
Absolutely. And with that being said, we'd love to jump right into it. Amber, could you kind of tell us what like your official job title is, and what does that really mean?
Sure. So I'm actually a senior project manager, and I work for Larson Engineering. We're a multidisciplinary engineering consulting firm, and we have about 12 offices across the nation, about 200 employees, and most recently we've, in the last couple of years, we've gone to 100% employee owned. So we are actually an ESOP company.
Wow.
We used to be privately held. So, but yeah, I have been working at Larson for, since 2007, so
Okay.
about 13 years. And before that, I worked at another firm. So I'm 42, and I've actually been working for about 20 years in the industry.
Cool.
So, yeah, that's my title.
Sure. And you mentioned a couple things that I had a question about. You said you're an interdisciplinary with engineering. So does that mean you guys have, like, you can do different areas of problem solving, and there's different departments that do that?
Yeah, exactly. So in my office, I work out in the Naperville office, so out in the suburbs. We have mostly structural, but we also have an MEP department and a small civil group. And then we also have some admin staff, IT department and such. But we also have a downtown office in Chicago near Union Station. And in that office, we have a group of engineers that really specializes in curtain wall design. And curtain wall is the glass and metal framing structure that basically makes a skin of, like, let's say a high-rise building. But it can also be called storefront, and it would be the similar, like, glass and usually aluminum mullion system that would be in the front of a store. Like you'd be walking on Main Street or something, you see a bunch of glass. So you can see inside of a store. All of that needs to be designed, obviously, on a high rise. It gets pretty involved when you're talking about pretty impressive wind loads. So we have a group in our downtown office that focuses a lot on that type of design, but we also have more general structural engineers downtown too. And then across the country, we have offices in different locations. Our first office was in the Minneapolis area, but we have a Phoenix office, an Atlanta office, even a New York City office now. So they each kind of have their unique specialties. We have a couple offices in Wisconsin, one in Appleton. They do a lot more industrial type structures, even like concrete bin and silo design. So
Wow.
We're varied in what we do and what we can do. We don't turn a lot of work down.
Well, that's a good thing, right? Especially now. So when you were saying, like, yeah, I guess I never really think about it. I just take for granted that there's this giant high rise with these gorgeous windows, but someone had to think about how high up it would be, how heavy it would be, how structurally sound it would be, how fast the wind could eventually put force on it and that. So we have to think of that all in advance before we can put it up there. And I'm sure price and materials is a big part of that. Like, we have to make it as cheap as possible, but as strong as possible. So that's a huge problem solving thing. Wow.
Absolutely.
Cool. So are you in that area where you're working with these glass and high rises, or what would be your area that you are currently kind of look into? Or are you kind of a jack of all trades and do a lot of different things?
Yeah, so I don't really do the curtain wall engineering so much. When I first started at Larson, I was kind of in a little bit of a subset of that group, and I did a lot of metal panel framing backup and design. So we've done the metal panel, like I personally was involved in the metal panel design for the big Sabella City Center complex in Las Vegas, which has it's like a huge shopping center, and then there's a couple of buildings associated with it too, but and like a train station, I think. But it's, if you see pictures of it, it's this crazy group of outdoor shops basically, and high end, and they have all these crazy angles of the outside facade is just, it's a really kind of cool architectural feature. But so, and it's all skinned with metal panel, and so
Okay.
somebody had to design the backup framing, which isn't even the main structure of the building. It's like kind of a sub-discipline, I guess you could say, or like a delegated design.
Hmm.
So I was involved in that, which we, you know, they do like wind studies. We would get specific wind pressures in all different parts of this crazy facade, and we'd have to design all the backup steel framing and connections that would support the metal panel to resist the
Wow.
wind load.
So if you're working on a project like that, obviously that you're not working alone, right? Is that like your company would do those wind pressure tests, or would that be another company doing that and sending you the data, so you are working with lots of different companies, or is that like a one-stop shop with you and a couple of your coworkers?
No, so we don't do the wind study. And another company, I think they're pretty well known, RWDI. They do the wind studies and basically provide a report, and that would usually go to the owner or the general contractor on the project, and then they would disseminate the information to us. And then it's very collaborative. So oftentimes what happens is we would be doing our portion of the design, let's say, and then we would provide back some documentation to the, let's say there's a building engineer of record, EOR, and they did the design for the main building structure. So sometimes like on that Sabella project, we would have to let the engineer of record know, hey, this design is going to be putting this load, this moment onto your structure. Can your structure take it? So yeah, it's very collaborative, lots of different people, lots of different chain of command sort of, but actually, yeah, the metal panel curtain wall isn't what I really do. Like I said, I started there, but I kind of, as I worked at Larson, I kind of just fell into some niche things, very niche things. I got through kind of a mentor, actually. I kind of got sucked into the world of bleachers
Okay.
and construction hoists. And now I also have a client that does personnel elevators for the grain industry. So very sort of non-traditional
Fun.
structural engineering. Most people think a building, and that's true. We do buildings. I've designed buildings for sure, but it's not my main focus daily. So daily, I'm usually working with either my construction hoist client or my SPPE client, the special purpose personnel elevator client. Because at Larson, at my company, they really encourage all of the engineers to kind of develop their own clients if they can. And obviously that's what we do, is we try to help our clients solve engineering problems. That's like the main focus every day. But yeah, obviously every day is different. Every day presents a new challenge. So yeah, so I've done a lot of construction hoists in over my time at Larson.
Oh, that's great. And talking about working with people in that, I'm assuming communication, organization, and then trust is probably a big part of when you're working with so many different groups. That's a unique dynamic. You're not a one person calling all the shots. So is that something where you find on a daily? Are you on phone calls or Zoom style meetings like this a lot? Is there tons of collaboration, or is this something that comes together all at the end? What does that look like kind of on the daily for you when you're kind of problem solving and working with these big groups of people?
Yeah. So definitely, we're still working from home. Um, so a lot of Zoom. We also use some technology called Rainbow, but just yeah, it allows us to kind of like place an in-office call just to our coworkers. If we want to share screen, we can. So there's a lot of that. But honestly, yeah, I get a lot of emails. So a day in the life might be I boot up my computer, I check my email, I see I have an email from a client. I might call the client back and ask them for a little bit more information about what's going on, what's the problem. Here's what I think we could probably do. And then I would kind of, get off with them and sort of like brainstorm or collaborate. Maybe I have to bounce some ideas off of a coworker or a more senior person like a principal or my direct supervisor, and then might estimate a fee for the job, and then I would write a proposal, and then I would send the proposal to my client. My client might approve that proposal. We might get going on the project. I mean, sometimes there's more time that has to pass in between, but then I might personally might hand that off to one of my younger engineers and then kind of direct them as to what I want them to do. This is what the scope of work is. These are the steps I think we should take. And then sometimes it goes according to that plan, and sometimes it goes way off the rails, and we have to, sidetrack and rethink things. But if it's all going according to plan, I would possibly review their work, and then depending on where the job is located, I might actually even be the one to sign and seal the documents. So oftentimes what we do is we're putting together either a calc book, a calculation book, or a set of construction documents or like contract documents, plans. They could be reports. Oftentimes we do site visits where we have to create a report with a bunch of photos at the back and that sort of thing. But then a signed and sealed set of documents would probably get sent back to our client, and then that you might think that's the end of the job, but then there's kind of the invoicing part. So I have to review invoices at different times in the month. So that's just kind of like how a bill becomes a law, like the life of a project.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, every day I'm writing a lot of emails. I'm making a lot of phone calls. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I did a lot of calculations on calc paper, and I can show you my calc paper right now. I have some here. So always putting pencil to paper. I use my calculator daily. I mean, whether it's me running a number or checking my younger engineers' work. But yeah, we do a lot of pencil to paper as structural engineers. I think a lot of people in school, college, it's like, well, I don't really know what this type of engineering is going to look like on the outside. I think a lot of engineers wind up getting out, and then they they go on just to more like management positions. But
Mhm.
as a structural engineer, you really actually are crunching a lot of numbers to see if things work. A lot of shear and moment calculations, and we work with every material you can think of. We work with the usual suspects, steel and concrete, but we also work with masonry, wood, aluminum, even fiberglass.
Okay.
So it's a lot of code books. I can tell you that I I I'm always learning something. Like I can't tell you. I mean, the concrete book is this thick, the steel book is this thick, and then there's a seismic manual that goes with it. I mean, there's so many codes. So honestly, I'm always learning something new.
Cool. And when you're working on these things, all the different coding in that, are there programs as well that like you've had to learn along the way? Or is that like, is someone already designed what they want it to look like and you are the person who figures out exactly how you can make that design work? Or is there some designing involved as well in your job? I guess I'm pretty ignorant to the world of engineering because we think of it as one blanketed idea, but as you're showing, there's so many little niches to it. And I think this is so great for our students to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can be a little bit of both. I mean, sometimes it's analysis where somebody hands you something and they say, this is what I want to build. Will it work? And so then my job is easy because I have it all laid out for me. I have the span of this beam. I have what the client wants to use as the beam. I can use a program like a finite element analysis program. We use RISA a lot, RISA 3D, RISA 2D. There's RAM S-beam. There's all kinds of programs out there, staff.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we are using programs to help us in our either analysis or design. But yeah, it can be either way. So if it's an analysis, you're basically analyzing what somebody wants to do, and you got to follow the load path. So first you got to develop what are all the loads on the structure, and then you got to put the loads on the members, and then you got to make sure that the members have the capacity to take all of that down to the ground, basically, or whatever is supporting that element. So, and sometimes we go back and say, yeah, everything's working beautifully. You've got a lot of excess capacity. You could even reduce the size here or there. Or other times it's the opposite. It's like, no, this isn't working. This needs to be bumped up, or this needs to be reinforced. Sometimes it's an existing structure, and we have to look at ways we can reinforce what's already there. And we try, obviously, to do these things the most economical way possible. Obviously, most clients don't have an unlimited budget, so yeah, it's a kind of a balancing act sometimes. But yeah, and then the other scenario, like you described, is if it's a design. If we get a vision from the architect, let's say on a building, and they say, okay, this is what I want to build. It's a public works facility, and it's mostly a warehouse, and we've got some shops in the back. I think I want to have a mezzanine here. There's going to be a line of steel here and here, and then we have like a vision, but some flexibility, and we can give feedback to the architect and say, well, I think it would be most economical to use long span bar joist here to support the roof. And then we think that you should use wide flange columns, or in some cases, like on a canopy design, we would suggest tubes. So yeah, there's some back and forth on more of a design.
Awesome. Well, thank you for, I think this has been so great, kind of just seeing all the different ins and outs. And I think students can kind of put themselves in your shoes and see, like, is this something that would interest me or that? And it sounds like you're constantly learning, constantly working with people. So never a dull moment for you. When you got into this, is this something you knew, like in college, you were going to head to, or is this kind of something you fell into that you became passionate about?
Right. So I did not know that this is what I wanted to do. It kind of was a little bit of elimination, kind of.
Sure.
So I grew up in Texas, and I went to Texas A&M University. I have two half brothers that both graduated from there, and one was actually a civil engineer too, but he's a lot older than me, so 11 years difference. And then so I went into engineering because I was pretty good in math and science. I kind of liked those subjects in high school, and but I chose civil when I first got to A&M because it was the broadest engineering field, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then so as I kind of got into maybe like my sophomore year, I was taking some of the disciplinary classes. Like in civil, there's transportation, there's water resources, environmental, structural, urban planning, sometimes even a geotech option. So I kind of, by process of elimination, I was like, I really don't like transportation. Really didn't like environmental. I didn't even take water resources because I was like, that doesn't interest me. So yeah, I kind of like fell into structures because it was challenging, and I kind of liked the challenge. And then I really got to do something cool between my junior and senior year. I got to do a study abroad. And so I went with my college. We had a small group, and we went to Italy and France, and I actually studied in Paris. but got to see some just amazing architectural and structural marvels before the study part on like a pre-trip through Italy. So that was really, really cool. And so yeah, I chose the structural discipline, graduated, and then I was really ready to leave school. I mean, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of hard classes. And so I did not get a master's. I wanted to get out and start working and see if I even liked this field.
Sure.
I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I had done some internships, but you don't really know until you get out. And honestly, my first job out of college was way different than my current job. So I've only had 2 jobs, and the switch came when I had my first child, my daughter. So I couldn't work in the city anymore. So I looked for a job in the suburbs, and that's why I switched. But yeah, so I would say I didn't know, and I think that's really pretty common. A lot of kids don't know what they want to do, and they might change majors a bunch. But I'm kind of the type of person that just says, all right, well, let me just grin and bear it for a while and see, because maybe things will change or get a little bit better. I would say I did have, I would call them problem colleagues at, I've had my issues at both jobs, but I guess I kind of like just feel like this too shall pass. You're gonna get through it. Things will change, and they did. And I feel like you just kind of learn from every situation, even if it's kind of a rough situation for a time. You kind of learn how you don't want to be moving forward. So I do think that in life you can learn something from every situation, even if it's a little bit challenging or tough to get through. I had some, times where I would come home just be so upset, and my husband would have to listen to me complain about the work situation. But yeah, you get through it, and you're just going to get stronger from it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point too. Something that a lot of times people don't bring up is that every job, even jobs you love, there's tough days or tough situations with people that you don't particularly mesh with, and that doesn't define your job, but it is a big part of your job. So that, yeah, pushing through, being gritty, and kind of making the best of the situation because in the end you really enjoy this job or you're passionate about it is one of the parts of life that we don't talk about often in a job, in a career. And I'm really glad you brought that up. One last thing then, because I want to respect your time, and I know it's your day off, girl. You got to enjoy that day. Is there anything you would have given advice to yourself or to students now, thinking back of all you know? What would be anything you would share, a tip, life hack, whatever, that maybe would be something that we could take from you, from your experience, that you wish you would have known?
Yeah, absolutely. I do really try to live life to the fullest, and I really like the motto, like, work hard, play hard.
Mm-hmm.
I I try to be as efficient as possible in everything I do. I mean, working at Larson has really encouraged that, because um, oftentimes we take on small fee jobs, and in order to make a profit on a small fee job, you really have to work hard to get through it and to be efficient at what you do. And so anyway, I try to apply that to life in general. But yeah, I can, piggybacking onto what you just said, like, not everything is going to go according to plan. And I do think that in general, the grass isn't always greener necessarily. So, think long and hard before you make a jump. But then that said, there are plenty of times when, you do make a change, and you just got to embrace it and go forward, and don't have regrets, don't look back. But yeah, I also think that I got some wise advice from my mother-in-law a long time ago. She said, Amber, if you're a conscientious person and you care, then anything you choose in life is going to be hard because you're going to work hard at it. And she had kids pretty young and became a stay-at-home mom, and she works really hard at what she does every day. Like she has a really clean house, a really nice house, and always had a home cooked meal and stuff. So I take that to heart because I do think that if you care, you are going to work hard no matter what you choose. And that's a really good thing. And you can be proud of that at the end of the day. And yeah, as far as like the little things to be efficient daily, I have learned a lot. I am sort of the stereotypical engineer. You know, I try to plan and I try to be organized as much as possible. I make a lot of lists. I have sticky notes all over my computer. I can hold them up. I check back with my lists all the time. I use Outlook to do. I use calendars. I use my iPhone calendar. I set reminders. I set alerts. Honestly, there's just so much. Our lives are so busy that if I didn't use those tools, it would all fall apart. I mean, I wouldn't remember half of what I had to do. So, yeah, I really use tools as much as I can to help me. But yeah, specifics to like job related things, I write down my conversations in a notebook. I have the notebook kind of divided by discipline or sort of like section of my life. So I have a section for my construction hoist client. I have a section for my bleacher clients, so on and so forth. And I make notes because, again, honestly, I've had to look back and be like, okay, what day did that happen on? They gave me direction on this project to do this on this day. And if I didn't have that element to look, it's not really a CYA cover your butt kind of thing, but in a way it really helps if you're in a jam, if you need to look back. So I do that. I also make documents inside of my projects called README files. They're just simple Word documents where I write down things that happen. A lot of times in our line of work, if you have something called scope creep, like your client asks you to do something that you really hadn't planned on, wasn't really part of the original agreement or really part of your original fee, you write that down. Something changes, a huge change on a project. I write those down in a little README file, because if it's a big project, at the end, after many months, you might be thinking to yourself, man, we had some overruns, how can I ask for an ad service on this project? I know we did some things that really weren't planned for in the beginning. And sometimes you can't really put your finger on what all those things were. But if you have this little README file, it doesn't have to take long. But when you're in the middle of it daily, and if you just go into this file and jot down a note and the day that it happened, when you get to the end, you can look back at that file and be like, oh, look, I have all of these things to trigger my memory. I can ask for an ad service on this, on this, on this. So yeah, I've learned to do these little things over the years, and they really seem to help. I'm trying to think. I know I have other advice.
Oh, you got your notes, your list. No, it's good. That's good. I think that's important too. I think in high school, a lot of us sometimes fly by the seat of our pants, and it's doable because school has such a structure built in that they don't get much of a choice. But you're right. When you're on your own, it's those little things that can add up to huge differences, including money for your company that could have been easily overlooked had you forgotten.
Yeah, and I have two more.
Sure.
Another thing I do is I have a folder called My Tools. And it's basically, over the years, things that I want to be able to access easily, like, oh, this is a really good detail. I know I'm going to need this detail on a future job, but I need to put it somewhere that I can go back and easily find it, because I'm not going to remember that it came from this particular project 5 years down the road when I need it. So I save it into a My Tools folder. And in that folder, I have all kinds of subfolders. You know, I have a subfolder for licensing because I'm a licensed engineer. And then in that folder, I have my different states that I'm licensed in. I have a folder for details I want to steal. That's the folder I would put that detail in, you know, and then inside of there, I might say, okay, this is a wood detail. I might break it down. So I over the years, I just shuttle things. I make copies of, oh, this is a really good calc. I know I'm going to need to reference this calc in the future. I'll save a copy of it in there. So that's one thing I do. And then the other thing I was just going to say as far as advice goes is don't be afraid to ask questions. It sounds cliche, but there's no dumb question. In my opinion, it's so true because everyone comes to the point in life they're at with a different set of experiences. And just because your experience hasn't given you the answer to that question at that point doesn't mean that you don't have experience and knowledge that the next person sitting next to you doesn't have. So please ask questions. It just shows that you want to learn, and nobody should make you feel bad for that ever.
Oh, Amber, this has been so much great advice. Big one I loved, live hard, play hard, or work hard, play hard, right? But then also, like you said, it's the details that can make a huge impact on your life, making you more efficient, allowing you to be just more valuable as a worker. And then I love that, kind of throwing the ego out the door, and don't be afraid to ask questions, that we're all learning and growing. And just because you don't know the answer to this doesn't mean you don't understand something so much more than another person. So Amber, this has been great. Thank you for taking us through all the different fields. I know you talked about some things that you're no longer even involved in. We appreciate you kind of going through the journey, but this is just so great to walk in someone else's shoes and just get little advice and tips, and also just a little bit of a point of view of what it looks like in the day in the life of for an engineer. So Amber, with that being said, thank you so much for your time. The Sandberg Eagles, thank you. And I hope you enjoy your day off.
Thanks so much, Phil. It was fun.
Yeah, this was fun too. Let me hit the unrecord button.